Yellowstone and Grand Teton national parks are next to each other, and they are huge. There are many things to see and to do. But, if you have only 3 days, can you do both with satisfaction? We did it in early May, 2022. Here is how we did it. We took an early flight from East Coast, and arrived at Salt Lake City shortly after the noon time. We got our rental car, and started driving toward West Yellowstone right away. We arrived before 7 p.m., the sun was just setting. Yellowstone Lodge was highly rated by travelers, and it was only 3 blocks from the west entrance. We would stay here for 3 nights, costing $423. However, 1 month later, it was $300 per night. That was part of our reason to travel in early May, before everywhere became crowded and more expensive. We had dinner at Fire Hole Barbecue restaurant a few blocks from the hotel, and the food was just delicious and inexpensive. After a good night's sleep, we would be ready for the first day. The weather was great on day 1. Once entered the park, it was 14 miles to Madison Junction. But it was a scenic drive. Not for long, a herd of bisons was marching alongside of our car. Madison River was right beside the road, and there are many turnouts to pull off the Highway 191, to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Once turned right at Madison Junction, we were heading to the Old Faithful. But along the way, we would stop at several geyser viewpoints. The first was Fountain Paint Pots. From this lower geyser basin, we are now heading to the Midway Geyser Basin, in which, the Biscuit Basin is the most famous. This is the famous Grand Prismatic Spring. However, due to the low air temperature in the morning, these warm springs are covered by heavy mist, and hard to see them clearly. In the afternoon, when the air temperature is close to the spring water temperature, they look much better. Now we are heading to the Old Faithful and Upper Geyser Basin. Here is the well-known historical lodge. But, you have to book for a room 13 months ahead. Besides, there is no internet or cell phone signal, if you stay here. Unlike other gushing geysers, the Old Faithful would gush out water and gas every hour or so, like the clockwork. We waited for about half of an hour. It is spectacular. It is close to noon time, we are heading back to Canyon Village, to visit various viewpoints there. This is the Artist Point. From the parking lot, about half of a mile hike would bring you to the viewpoint. This is the Upper Fall, 109 feet high. Just breathtaking. The next is Inspiration Point to see the Lower Fall. The fall is more than 300 feet high. The canyon is about 20 miles long, and the depth is between 900 and 1200 feet. The next is Uncle Tom's Trailhead. This is the last sizable fall of Yellowstone River. From here on, the river runs into plain area into the lake smoothly. This ended the day 1 outing. It would take 1.5 hours to drive back to the hotel. We already decided that we are going back to Fire Hole Barbecue restaurant to diner again. On day 2, we will turn left at Madison Junction toward north, stopping in Gibson Fall, the upper terrace of Mammoth Hot Springs, and turn to the east toward Llama Valley. Here is the Gibson Fall, near the junction of North and South Loops. Along the way, we found many people become excited suddenly, because they spotted a bear in remote woods. With their long lens cameras, they have been waiting for hours. They would not let this rare moment go. After passing a narrow passage between 2 mountains, Driving on the edge of steep cliff, we arrived at upper terrace of Mammoth Hot Springs. There are more than 100 springs in this area, and the views are just spectacular. Not far from Upper Terrace is historical Mammoth Fort. There are many lodges and shops. It could be crowded, but we are here in early May, so did not have any problem to find a parking spot. Next, we headed to Llama Valley, and many tourists were there, waiting to see wildlife. We did not have too much time to spare, since it would take 2.5 hours to drive back to hotel. We started turning back just before 4 o'clock. On day 3, we started early, heading to Jackson, which will take a little more than 2 hours, but the scenery along the way made it worthwhile. We arrived at the hotel before noon, too early to check in. So we headed to the park immediately. This is a map of attractions in Grand Teton. Our plan is that, we are going to visit Jenny Lake and String Lake area along Teton Park Road, inside the park. And tomorrow morning, we will hit the attractions along Highway 191, outside the park. Tomorrow afternoon, we will drive back to Salt Lake City. That is the one-day Teton tour schedule. Jenny Lake is very beautiful. There are many tourists here, but not crowded at all. The ice on the lake was not entirely melted. So, boating on the lake was out of question. String Lake is a narrow water, liking North and South Lakes. Here, ice is totally gone. It is exhilarating to hike along the lake shore, with the mighty Teton right across the lake. We went back to Jackson around 6 p.m. It's a touristy town, with many shops and restaurants. And, they are quite pricey, too. We had dinner at Tie Me Up restaurant and brewery, and ordered a pad thai noodle dish, a curry chicken, and tom yum soup. We liked their locally brewed beer very much. In day 4 morning, we travel along Highway 191, saw some wildlife. The historic Mormon Raw was still standing against the background of Grand Teton. Quite impressive indeed. The views of Snake Rive, Jackson Lake, and other creeks, made Grand Teton mountain range more beautiful. We started to head towards Salt Lake City around noon, and we arrived before dark. If you need to fly back the next day, you can do that comfortably. For us, however, this was just the first leg of our 14-day trip. We will head to southern Utah and northern Arizona the next day. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.